Want to know the secret of success? 3 words: read more books. Okay, maybe there's other secrets, but reading more books is the number one way to get smarter and be better in your career and in life. And this show is going to celebrate the best books of 2024. My name is Rohit Bhargava. I'm the host of the Non-Obvious Book Awards. And in this show, we're going to talk about some of the absolute best books that were published throughout the year. Stay tuned for this big announcement of the Non-Obvious Book Awards winners 2024. This is the 10th year of the Non-Obvious Book Awards, one of the world's largest free, independently run book awards programs for nonfiction and business books. Why do I start off with free? One of the things that sets these book awards apart is that we consider books from all different publishers, self-published titles, anything that anyone wants to submit, and there's no fee to enter. Every year, we get submissions from hundreds of publishers from across the board. For the past decade, we've selected books on wide-ranging topics from pockets to parking, delusions to doodling, and showcased books on everything from planning a Viking funeral to reimagining bullshit jobs to saving local news. Every year, we try and find the most interesting, non-obvious, sometimes underappreciated books, and then showcase them as part of our shortlist, longlist, and winners. Before we get started with this year's awards, I want to answer one of the questions I get most often, which is, why do we do these awards? So first of all, I love books. I am an author of 10 books myself. I've also spent a long time working in communications and advertising, and so I love new ideas and the power of books to relay them. But also, about 10 years ago, I started a publishing company, so I know the publishing side of books as well. And one of the things I brought together with my team is we look at every aspect of the books. We look at the editorial, the cover, the design, the packaging, and the power of the ideas and what makes them really unique. Every year, we're going through more than 1,000 titles to identify the top 100 that we love, and then the top 15 for our shortlist, and 5 only to be awarded, which we're going to announce in this show. And by doing that process year after year, we get a chance to really see what makes a great, fascinating, and non-obvious book. And I hope you enjoy the selections that we chose for you. And now, without further ado, let's start with the long list. When talking about the long list every year, I find myself saying the same thing. It was harder than ever before to pick. It happens to be true. This year was no different. It was tougher than ever before to find the final 100 books to feature on our long list, but the ones that we've selected, I think, represent a wonderful diversity of topics, authors, and perspectives. Let's go through just a few of them. A More Beautiful Question was the latest 10th anniversary edition of a book that you might recognize, which has been out for some time. Certainly worth a read if you haven't checked it out before. Assembling Tomorrow was from the Stanford Design School. I really enjoyed that one. Blotter was a very non-obvious book about the history of LSD paper. The latest from Michael Port, Book Yourself Solid for coaches and consultants. If you do any coaching or consulting, that'll be a great guide. Cue the Sun was a deep look at reality TV from Pulitzer Prize winning author Emily Nussbaum. Design for a Radically Changing World was a book that I actually featured as part of my Inc. magazine column earlier this year. Genesis is the last book that came out from famous author and well-known personality Henry Kissinger, along with a few other authors, including Eric Schmidt from Google. And Bard Press's latest Give to Grow is a great read as well. How to Piss Off Men, 101 Things to Say to Shatter the Male Ego, was a very unusual choice, but it had some wonderful ideas in there and really got you thinking about what it means to be a male moving into the future. How to Win Friends and Influence Fungi from the Math Nerds was a wonderful collection of stories. And Humanize was one of the most unique guides that I've seen to how we design our cities. Moving on, Indivisible from Denise Hamilton was a deep look at diversity and how we can create a more diverse and inclusive world. Is Your Work Worth It? All about finding purpose. Likeable Badass was a very popular book this past year, talking about how to get ahead and also be likable at the same time, which is very tough for anyone, but based on double standards, perhaps even tougher for women sometimes. Magic Pill from author Johan Hari, who writes about the evolution and growth of weight loss pills. So a very timely book, whether you're on some of these pills or even considering it or have just heard about them. Moving on, Micro Skills was a great look at some small things you can do to create big impact. Modern Friendship was a wonderful guide looking at the importance of friendships. Gary Shapiro, head of CTA and head of the CES show, which is coming up next month, wrote a new book called Pivot or Die, all about how leaders thrive when everything changes. So if you're trying to lead through disruption, that's a really strong one. And Gautam Chopra wrote a book about the religion of sports, and he's a well-known documentary filmmaker and just a wonderful voice on the power of sports and why that awakens so much passion within us. Moving on, there was a book called Seen Yet Unseen, which was a look at the tech industry from an unusual African-American perspective. Shame on You, How to Be a Woman in an Age of Mortification. I love this idea of the age of mortification. Smart and Out Loud, How to Get Noticed for Work for All the Right Reasons. And Subpar Planet was a very entertaining look at all of the ways that people have gone to amazing national monuments and rated them 1 star online and shared some of the reasons why they thought they were 1 star. Smaller than expected, for example. It was just a really funny look at that and how we actually rate the travel that we do. Moving on, there was a book called The Algorithm that won several other awards this year, and it was all about how hiring and firing is increasingly being done by AI and what we need to think about if that continues to be the case. The Anti-Ableist Manifesto from Tiffany Yu was a really interesting book about what we don't think about when it comes to creating a more inclusive world for people with disabilities. And The Anxious Generation was a book that really started a movement around getting more children to not have access to social media or phones in the classroom and to move them away from a phone-based childhood. The Living City was another unique perspective of a title, and it talked all about why cities don't actually need to be green, and maybe there's an alternative to that, which was not a perspective that we had seen very often. The Plan from Kendra Adachi, all about being a lazy genius, and she has a podcast as well. And then Riddles of the Sphinx was all about the role of women in crossword puzzle development, which was a very unique topic. The Wisdom Whisperers was one of the books that I thought the idea was very powerful, which is that we all could benefit from making friends from people who are significantly older than ourselves, having older friendships. Guy Kawasaki has his new book, Think Remarkable, and he's an amazing podcaster, and this book really breaks down what it takes to be remarkable. Trippy got a lot of attention. This book was all about the power of medicinal psychedelics and why we may need to take them seriously. What the Chicken Knows was a unusual take at imagining why we should treat chickens with a little more humanity and what role they play in how we connect with one another. Good People was an effort from the team at Upworthy to share great stories that show humans behaving kindly towards other humans, which is something that we definitely should read more about. So that was the long list of titles, 100 titles. You can see all of them at nonobviousbookawards.com, and you can read more about all of those titles and buy them from that link as well. So now let's move on to some of the biggest book trends of the year. The first big theme of the year was calming anxiety and burnout. And all of these books talked about ways that you could reset your working dynamic, suffer less from getting burnt out, find a better balance between work and life, and just generally calm your anxiety. Second big trend was a surprising one. It was all about math in every way. So the gravity of math, how math affects different things, math in algorithms, math behind games, learning math, how to get better at math, how to think like a mathematician. All of these books featured some way of rethinking the dynamic of why math actually matters in our lives. Third big trend was about aging. So in the past, we saw a lot of books about longevity and how to live longer. And this year, there seemed to be a bit of a shift towards books that talked about aging well, living well for the time that you have, whether you live to 100 or less than that. And these books all featured that. They talked about golden years and how to be old and living with midlife and getting better at existing in the moment that you're in your life. Fourth big trend was about this ongoing dynamic of rethinking higher education. And in some ways, it was about AI and how AI will revolutionize education. In other ways, it was thinking about alternatives to college and to the college experience, being apprentice, taking a different path to get into university. And then there were several books that just talked about if we're thinking about rethinking education, we also need to rethink how we market and promote and talk about it and communicate about it. The fifth big trend was all about generosity. And all of these books talked about being more generous. And in a time when it feels like toxicity gets rewarded, these were really wonderful antidotes to that because they talked about why generosity and kindness still actually matters and why we should all practice a little bit more of that in our lives. The sixth big trend was about saving humanity. So last year we read a lot about AI and how we need to make AI more human. This year, we still had that topic, but these books focused on something a little bit different. They talked about what is the future of humanity going to look like in a world where AI coexists with us. And these books really help to reimagine what it means to be human and whether we should still exist the way we exist and how we might need to change in that technology-driven future. These titles were all about the female lens on something that typically women entrepreneurs and business owners and pioneers have been erased from. So, for example, there was a book all about women of Wall Street and how they had helped to shape Wall Street. Women in art, women in branding, women in music, women in crossword puzzles, women on Fifth Avenue. All of these books, women in tech, all of these books offered that previously ignored perspective and brought it to the front through the books and through the perspectives of the authors that were bringing them to life. The eighth trend was all about finding purpose. If we're going to be spending more time at work or doing work differently because of all of the disruption, we have to be able to find a better purpose. We can't just exist at work. We have to do something different. We have to be different. And these books help to imagine a different way to have a better relationship with the work and purpose that we have. Once again this year, there were books about dire predictions and how the earth may burn and nuclear war and all of those topics. But also there were quite a few books that offered something that we started to refer to in our team as climate solutionism. These books were offering a perspective on what it would take to help the world get better. How could we solve some of these ecological problems? What are the real life solutions that are sometimes already working that we just need to look at, know about, and perhaps spread more farther? And so these books all featured that solutionism, which was a more hopeful take on the climate crisis. Perhaps very timely, considering the US just went through a contentious presidential election, all of these books aim to reimagine what it means to actually live in a democracy, to be a citizen of a democratic nation, and perhaps how we might need to rethink some of the intentions of the founders of the US at least, and rethink what citizenship actually means. And these books all offered a different perspective on that for varying age ranges. The 11th trend is what we called quiet leadership. And this was, again, perhaps surprising considering how loud we find leaders to be in media and in the news right now. But quiet leadership was rapidly emerging as a way of standing out and perhaps a better way of leading by example and leading by using your quiet side, but then also knowing when to leave that quiet side behind and actually speak up. And these books focused on the dual nature of those two things. And the final trend was all about friendship. Last year, one of the big themes was loneliness and how we were dealing with loneliness. And this year, we brought it back to friendship and what it takes to actually be a better friend and to have more friends and exist and take care of them. So those were some of the big macro book themes that we found from all of the titles this year. And now I want to give you a special look at some of our favorite titles and cover designs of the year. I spend a lot of time thinking about book titles. As an author, I have to title my own books, but I've also worked with more than 100 authors to title their books too. And at the end of the day, it's all about positioning. How are you going to relay what this book is about in just a few words on a cover? So I want to share with you some of the best book titles from 2024 that really stood out to our team as doing a wonderful job of positioning a book as being something unique and interesting. The first one we're going to share is How to Walk into a Room, The Art of Knowing When to Stay and When to Walk Away. How to Walk into a Room immediately tells you exactly what this book is going to give you. And it's something interesting and something valuable. I can imagine a lot of people saying, well, that is a skill that I need to have, and that's something that I want to pick up. And indeed, many of our reviewers and panelists, they gravitated towards that title and said, oh, I'd really like to read that, which is one of the marks of a great title. This second one is in a similar category. I hate job interviews. How to stop stressing and start preparing for job interviews. And this one, immediately identifiable. We understand why people would hate job interviews. If you've been through some recently, you probably identify with that. And this book says there's a different way to do it and gives you some tips on how to do it. So again, immediately useful, very practical. This one goes in a little bit of a different direction, sort of playful. Keanu Reeves is Not in Love with You. It's a book about dating, but also how to not get taken for a ride when you're on some of these online dating sites, which is a huge topic and really important. So this book does a great combination of bringing that sassiness together with a really serious topic to give you a sense of what it's going to be about. This next one is Not the End of the World. How we can be the first generation to build a sustainable planet. So sometimes a really successful book cover explains, and a book title explains exactly what the book isn't. So this book is not about how the world's going to end. It's about how we can actually save the world, how we can do better. And that title really worked well. This one I love. It's a play on words. Obituary, a big hot book of death. And this one, Obituary, is really funny because it offers a fun perspective, but the title also gives you a sense that it's going to be a different look at a topic that other people have covered in different ways. And that's what you want to get across in a book oftentimes. The next one, She-Wolves, play off of Wolves of Wall Street. And this is the untold story of women of Wall Street. And this was the perfect title to get that across, that mentality across, by using something that people might already be familiar with and giving it that little bit of a twist to make it non-obvious. This one, I think I would put into the category of brutally honest. This is just a brutally honest cover. Nobody cares about your career. Happens to be true, as anyone who's been in the working world for a while knows. But this book really did a nice job of bringing that brutal honesty to the title and then sharing exactly what it's going to talk about so that it'll help you to focus on your own career even when no one else is. This one, The Other Significant Others, was a wonderful way of describing what friends actually are. They're the other significant others. And this title was beautifully done and really led to, I think, a lot of people picking up this book and thinking, well, that is something that I need, and that is how I should be treating my friends. This title went for edginess, and I thought it worked. It was You Can't Market Manure at Lunchtime, and Other Lessons from the Food Industry for Creating a More Sustainable Company. So the title was meant to get you to pick up the book. The topic is a little bit niche. You may or may not be interested in food and sustainable companies, but the title really did a wonderful job of getting you to at least pick up the book and check it out, which is what a title should do. And the last one we want to feature is the next sequel, if you will, to The Tipping Point. And it was The Revenge of the Tipping Point. This was picked as one of the best titles simply because when you are writing about something that is the next step of something that everyone knows, there's a temptation to offer something a little bit different or go in a different direction. And I thought this title did a nice job of not doing that and leaning into what people already know. Everyone knows The Tipping Point. So why not include that in the title and bring that back and say this is the next level of that? So those were some of our favorite titles from 2024. We are now at the part of the show where we're going to judge some books by their covers. No, I'm just kidding. We're not actually judging these books by their covers, but we are judging covers. We're selecting our top 10 book cover designs of the year. And the first one I want to share with you is Briefly Perfectly Human. So you can get a sense already of the wonderful printing of this, but the design of it really brings to life this idea of making an authentic life by getting real about the end. And the next one is How the World Ran Out of Everything. And this one is a fully illustrated cover. It almost looks like a cartoon, but it's a very serious topic, which is inside the global supply chain and why it fails so often. And sometimes what makes a design nice is you can see on the spine how this design is carried through all the way. Really nice combination all around. This one, How to Tell When We Will Die, was a very distinctive color. When our team first evaluated books, this was one that people just couldn't resist picking up, which is one of the marks of a great cover design, that people just can't resist picking it up. This one we also love, magical realism. You may be able to see that on the edges, it sort of looks like a worn novel on the side, and it's a very stylized retro kind of look, which I think really was popular right now. And it's super distinctive. Again, really bright, unique colors, and a nice visualization of some of the things that the book actually talks about as well. This book was all about lies and how stories might exploit us. And so it looks like a redacted government form, and a lot of it is blanked out. And so what the book talks about was brought through in the cover so that you could understand exactly what this book was about right from the beginning. Another title we liked, Mindless, The Human Condition in the Age of Artificial Intelligence. Again, super bright, this one. And sometimes when we are selecting some of these covers, what we're looking at is, did this really stand out? And this is a topic that was quite popular right now. AI, the age of artificial intelligence, human condition. It was one of our themes, one of our trends, all of these books talking about this. And so trying to stand out sometimes is about knowing who you're up against. So this book did not look like any of the other books that were about AI and the human condition. And sometimes that's really what it's about, being very unusual and non-obvious about a cover design in comparison to the other books that you're competing against that are on a similar topic. This one was actually one of my favorites of the year, The Age of Grievance, because it's all about why we get so angry and why rage powers so much of what we do, but it's very subtle. You can see the gas being poured on the match, and if you look closely at the inside of the match here, it's a middle finger, indicating rage. It's quite simple, but there's a very subtle element as it goes all the way through the cover. This one is a hand-illustrated cover, How Women Made Music, but it did bring to life exactly what the book was going to be. And this one was very nice because it actually carries through all the way to the interior. This one we really liked, and it was from the team behind Delayed Gratification, which is one of my favorite magazines. And it offers a delayed take on what the news is. And this is a compilation of facts, but it's hand-illustrated. Again, it's very handy. It's positioned, and the way that the book's done, especially with the colored end sheets here, really indicates this is a great gift book. And that's the category that I think this book is really aiming for. And they do a nice job of that with the cover design and then also with all the other elements of how it's brought together. And finally, the last cover design we'll feature is Bad Therapy, Why the Kids Aren't Growing Up. And it's got this teenager who looks like she's kind of inside of a glass jar, unable to go out and experience the world, which was a really nice photorealistic way of illustrating the premise of this book, which is that we need to let these kids grow up and we can't hold them back or protect them from everything, because that's not a good way to grow up. So those were some of the best favorite cover designs from the Non-Obvious team in 2024. And now is the moment that you have been waiting for. It is the shortlist announcement for the 2024 Non-Obvious Book Awards. These were the absolute best nonfiction and business books of the whole year. And let's get started revealing them right now. Chris Anderson knows big ideas. As the head of TED, the organization behind TED Talks and TEDx, he's been witness to more big ideas and the backstories behind them than most people. And his new big idea is featured in this book, Infectious Generosity, which is our pick for the 2024 Non-Obvious Book Awards shortlist. In Infectious Generosity, Anderson talks about the power of being courageously generous and outlines exactly why generosity is so important when it comes to thinking about technology, the way we live our lives, the way we work, and how we interact with other people. Here's a passage from the book. How about making goodness the very opposite of boring? Let's be generous in a way that gives people goosebumps. A butterfly flap of benevolence on one side of the world can then trigger a hurricane of kindness on the other. This is a timely book in a moment when we could use more kindness in the world than ever before. And in this book, Anderson outlines exactly why we need it and exactly how to do it as well. For all of those reasons, Infectious Generosity is one of our picks for the Non-Obvious Book Awards Shortlist 2024. The best-selling author of a book about cults may be the perfect person to explain exactly why our brains work in such irrational ways. Our next pick for the Non-Obvious Book Awards Shortlist 2024 is The Age of Magical Thinking, Notes on Irrationality by Amanda Montell. This book is a deep dive into what scientists call cognitive biases, but the author of this book calls magical thinking. And here's a passage from the book. The universe has your back. Sounds like a positive affirmation. But to me, it's still a conspiracy theory because it plays into the narrative that the universe cares, that it could be out to get you if it wanted to. Nature does not care like that. If you're a fan of behavioral science and if you've read about irrational thinking, this book offers a little bit of a different take. For all of those reasons, The Age of Magical Thinking is one of our picks for the Non-Obvious Book Awards Shortlist 2024. We're often told that imagination can solve a lot of our problems. It also can be a force that holds us back. Our next pick for the Non-Obvious Book Awards Shortlist 2024 is Imagination by Ruha Benjamin. This is a manifesto all about the power of imagination to help us reimagine a new world, but also it's a warning that sometimes the oppressive systems that hold us back are the result of someone's imagination too. And so we have to be able to see both sides of the imagination, and this book really did an amazing job of painting that picture. Let's look at a passage from the book. Most of us tend to associate imagination with a joyful awakening of the mind. But look closer, and you'll see that imagination is not a wholesale good. It is easy to lose sight of the array of oppressive imaginaries that more casually govern our lives. This book is one of the more clear-eyed looks that you'll find about the power of imagination and exactly why sometimes it is a force that does exactly what we don't want it to do in our worlds. For all of those reasons, Imagination, a Manifesto, is one of our picks for the Non-Obvious Book Awards 2024 shortlist. One of the biggest topics of books this year was how to imagine the human existence in a world of AI. And one of the books that asked the question most directly and perhaps concerningly was our next pick for the Non-Obvious Book Awards shortlist 2024. Should We Go Extinct by philosopher Todd May. This book explores exactly what the question on the title is. Should humans continue to exist in a world where we've made it, in many ways, quantifiably worse for the environment, for animals, for any other metric that you might choose? The world could potentially be better off without most of us. Here's a passage from the book. Maybe instead of asking whether we will come to justify our future existence, we should ask instead whether we're willing to try. Whether we will do that is not up to our predictive powers. It is up to our commitment. This book is exactly what you might experience if you've ever been in a philosophy class. It's filled with questions and ideas to help you think about some of these deeper elements of human existence that probably most of us don't spend most of our day thinking about. But at a time when we are reimagining what it means to be human dealing with technology that is getting faster and smarter every single day, this book felt like a really urgent and important read. For all of those reasons, Should We Go Extinct by Todd May is one of our picks for the Non-Obvious Book Awards Shortlist 2024. Do you listen to new music anymore? Do we even want new music? Our next pick for the Non-Obvious Book Awards Shortlist 2024 is Endless Refrain by David Rowell. David's a music critic and writes about what it means to have new music today and why so few of us seem to be listening to new music anymore. Here's a passage from the book. It feels like we've never had a greater appetite for music or had it play a bigger role in our daily existence. It's just that we can't stop looking to the past for our musical gratification. Music, in general, is an incredibly nostalgic art form. In this book, the author talks about music in all of the different ways we listen to it and explores everything from tribute bands to nostalgia of music to why our musical tastes as we get older seem to get locked in, even as we change in other ways and change our preferences. What will it take for new music to survive? Not just economically, but also in our minds. Can we fall in love with new music? As I read this book, I started reminding myself that I do need to go back to new music and return to some of the artists that I loved and the new music that they created too. So I was listening to a lot of music as I was reading this book, which was, I think, kind of the point. Sometimes to help new music survive, all of us have to make an effort to seek it out and make it a part of our lives. For all of those reasons, Endless Refrain was one of our picks for the Non-Obvious Book Awards Shortlist 2024. Ask anyone to make a list of their passions, and one of the things that will often end up on the list is travel. But how do we travel, and how can we make a positive impact on the world in the way that we travel. Our next pick for the Non-Obvious Book Award shortlist is The New Tourist by Paige McClanahan, a book that explores what it means to be a tourist and actually tries to reclaim that word. Here's a passage from the book. Our redemption as tourists lies not in wallowing in a sense of superiority over the people standing in line ahead of us as we wait to get into the Louvre. It lies in elevating our understanding of what tourists are and the important role that we, play in the world. This book looks at every dimension of travel, from the impact on the environment to how we decide where to go, to the rise of travel books and travel guidebooks. If you love travel and are interested in how we travel and how we might be able to travel better in the future, this book will be a very wonderful read for you. For all of those reasons, The New Tourist is one of our picks for the Non-Obvious Book Awards Shortlist 2024. We have been promised the future for a long time, but why isn't it here already? That's the focus of our next pick for the Non-Obvious Book Award Shortlist 2024, The Long History of the Future by Nicole Kobe. This book takes a look at technologies that are immediately futuristic, like driverless cars, and talks about exactly why they're so difficult to build, more difficult than we actually think they are oftentimes. Here's a passage from the book. There's a swath of future technologies that have long felt on the precipice of arriving, yet remain just out of reach. Progress is disappointingly slow because building things is hard, especially things we haven't built before. Unlike many books about the future, this one dissects what the future might look like and explains why it's a little bit further off than we might think. But that doesn't mean we're not advancing along the way. There are many incremental innovations that are changing our lives on the way to that big technology that we often hear about. And that's the nuanced point of this book that it really brings to life. That we are moving forward and things are headed towards the future, even though sometimes maybe we don't realize it. For all of those reasons, The Long History of the Future was our pick for the Non-Obvious Book Award Shortlist 2024. Being an artist is hard, and sometimes you just need a boost to keep on going. Our next pick for the Non-Obvious Book Award Shortlist 2024 is That Boost. The Problems in the Art World, an Artist's A to Z Action Guide by Brainerd Carey, is a book all about what artists need to know in order to be successful. Here's a passage from the book. There truly is not an objective standard to what is good art. I am enough. My art is enough. I can make whatever I wish. I make the rules. You may not be an artist, but the way this book is written is as a combination of affirmations and reminders that you're good enough to do the thing that you want to do. For all of those reasons, this was one of our unusual but highly relevant picks for the Non-Obvious Book Awards Shortlist 2024. How do we motivate young people? It's a question that you might be wondering whether you're working with young people or whether you're a parent or whether you're a teacher. And our next pick for the Non-Obvious Book Awards Shortlist 2024 explores exactly that question. 10 to 25, The Science of Motivating Young People by psychology professor David Yeager takes a deep look at what it means to be motivating somebody who's younger and, interestingly enough, the commonalities between someone who is 10 years old and 25 years old. Here's a passage from the book. There are hidden neurobiological and motivational similarities across the age range from 10 to 25. What is the important change? It is the motivation to express feelings of status and respect. This book is a longer side book, but a deep dive into all of the different aspects of understanding how the young mind works. And it will be immediately useful for anyone who is trying to teach or manage or coach anybody who is in this age range of 10 to 25, and also for parents who are just trying to understand how to help their kids learn better. For all of those reasons, 10 to 25 was one of our picks for the Non-Obvious Book Awards 2024 shortlist. How do you see what others miss? That's the subtitle of my book about non-obvious thinking, but it's also the theme for our next pick on the Non-Obvious Book Award Shortlist 2024. Look Again, The Power of Noticing What Was Always There. This book is about dishabituating yourself, So basically, we get habituated to the things that are in our lives, and this book offers a reminder that sometimes we need to break out of that and notice those things in order to come up with new ways of seeing the world. Here's a passage from the book. Why are we quick to habituate? The answer is not that we are weak, ungrateful, or overwhelmed beings who do not appreciate threats and wonders. This happens because your brain stops responding to things that don't change. There's a very physical reason why we don't pay attention to those things that we become used to. But it happens throughout our lives and with many of the different things that we encounter every single day. And this book was a really powerful reminder that if we're going to break out of that, we have to train ourselves to notice these details, to pay attention to them, and then dishabituate ourselves sometimes when it makes sense. For all of those reasons, Look Again was one of our picks for the Non-Obvious Book Awards Shortlist 2024. So those were our picks for the Non-Obvious Book Awards shortlist, and I am about to announce the 5 winners. But before I do, I just want to share a big thank you to all of the authors and publicists and people in the world of publishing who all submitted their books for consideration this year. I'm not joking when I said it was really tough to pick and narrow it down to our 100 books for the long list and the 10 for the short list and the 5 winners that I'm about to announce. But there were amazing ideas we read about throughout the year. And congratulations, by the way, to anyone who did publish one of these books and got their ideas out into the world. I know as a fellow author that there's a lot of people who talk about doing a book, writing a book, and getting it out there. And for all of you who did submit your books this year, you've done that. It is really an amazing thing, and congratulations to all of you. I'm sorry we couldn't honor all of the books that we received. Now, let's get on to the 5 winners. A useful book is one that gives you practical, down-to-earth, real advice that you can use on a daily basis. And our pick for the Non-Obvious Book Awards 2024 Most Useful Book is Negotiating While Black by Damali Peterman. This book is from a lawyer's perspective, but it gives you everything you need in order to negotiate in any situation where you might be underestimated. Here's a passage from the book. This book is for everyone and anyone who has been underestimated at the negotiating table, and for those who have tried the traditional pathways in bargaining and haven't found consistent success. It turns out you can negotiate as yourself and win. What was fascinating about this book is that a lot of the advice you typically get about negotiating is countered in this book by new techniques that are things that are kind of unusual that you probably wouldn't think to do, such as making personal connections in a different way and coming from it from a perspective of knowing why and how you're being underestimated in order to be more successful in that negotiation. This book is not just if you're Black. I found it to be highly relevant in any situation where perhaps you are not appreciated for all of the skills and backgrounds that you bring, and you could benefit from having a different approach to negotiating. For all of those reasons, Negotiating While Black was our pick for the most useful book in the Non-Obvious Book Awards 2024. An entertaining book is one with stories or ideas so engrossing that we just couldn't put it down. And our pick for the 2024 Non-Obvious Book Awards Most Entertaining Book is Sticky Notes, Memorable Lessons from Ordinary Moments, by middle school teacher known by his students as Mr. Ike. This book is filled with heartbreaking, heartwarming stories of daily interactions from a teacher with his students and the lessons that he's taking away from them as well as the students are taking away. And as you read through this, it will immediately make you emotional, maybe, for a time when your kids were in middle school, or perhaps when your kids will go to middle school, or if you don't have kids, just children in your life and the interactions that you have with them that are sometimes interestingly meaningful for them in unusual and unexpected ways. This book is a great gift for any teachers in your life. It's an amazing read if you're a parent, and if you're anyone who just loves the childhood perspective and what it can teach us about the world. Sticky Notes is a great read. For all of those reasons, Sticky Notes was our pick for the Non-Obvious Book Awards Most Entertaining Book of 2024. A shareable book features a viral idea that everyone will or should be talking about. And our pick for the 2024 Non-Obvious Book Awards Most Shareable Book is Super Communicators by Charles Duhigg. If you've ever met someone who is able to connect with anyone and wondered how they did it, that was the premise of this book from Charles, which explores exactly what it means to be a super communicator, the sort of person who can connect with anyone. Here's a passage from the book. Perhaps the correct approach wasn't trying to put yourself in someone's shoes. That, after all, was impossible. Rather, maybe the best you can do is ask questions. Ask about people's lives. Ask what they're feeling, about their hopes and fears, and then listen. This book is a masterclass in everything you need to know to be a better communicator, including how to ask deeper questions instead of shallow ones, transform any interaction, and looks at super communicators across many different fields, FBI, hostage negotiators, CIA recruiters, and tells the story of why they're able to be so effective at doing what they do. For all of those reasons, Super Communicators is our pick for the Non-Obvious Book Awards Most Shareable Book of 2024. An original book features an idea that you're unlikely to find anywhere else. And our pick for the Non-Obvious Book Awards 2024 Most Original Book is Trash Talk by Rafi Kohan. This book is about exactly what you think it is. Trash talk, smack talk, whatever you want to call it. It's all of the ways that we insult the people that we are against as a way of playing a mind game. And here's a passage from the book. Trash talk has been regularly dismissed as frivolous and unserious, even as marketers leverage its cultural significance for commercial gain. Most of all, it's a book about learning to perform under pressure. One of the things the author starts with is talking about all of the people who were confounded that he was even thinking about writing a book on this topic. That's one of the indications that you have an original idea, when people just haven't heard it or seen it before. And this book goes into everything about the upside of trash talk in terms of psyching out your opponents, to the downside of it and why we might want to use it or understand when it's being used on us. For all of those reasons, Trash Talk is our pick for the only book awards program that isn't total garbage, the Non-Obvious Book Awards 2024. An important book is one that will change your life and maybe even the world. Our pick for the 2024 Non-Obvious Book Awards Most Important Book is Brave New Words: How AI Will Revolutionize Education and Why That's a Good Thing by Sal Khan. You might be familiar with Khan from his work at the Khan Academy, but he's been one of the pioneers in trying to figure out how AI could become a personalized tutor and realize the vision of what AI could do in education in a positive way. Here's a passage from the book. Is Khanmigo AI a replacement for a human teacher? No, and it never will be. But can it be a powerful tool for students who are confused, who need extra help to clarify math concepts, who need a review of ideas? Absolutely. This book takes you behind the scenes of all of the work that the Khan Academy has been doing to test AI and make it the personalized tutor that it could have the potential to become, to help kids learn better, faster, and in new ways, and to democratize learning. There's a bold vision in this book. It's very optimistic, but there's some real insights there in terms of the process that they've gone through to try and make AI as good as it could be. And if we're going to get the AI tool that we hope for in the future, that is a wonderful boon for education, AI and Khan Academy and Sal Khan will be at the center of making that happen. For all of those reasons, Brave New Words is our pick for the most important book of 2024 in our Non-Obvious Book Awards. Thank you for joining me for this presentation of the Non-Obvious Book Awards 2024 shortlist and winners and trends and book covers and all of the other things we talked about in this show. If you want to dig further into any of these books, many of the authors will be guests on my podcast, The Non-Obvious Show, and we'll be featuring content all about them at the nonobviousbookawards.com. Please check all of that content out, read these books, buy them, support the authors, and in general, read more books, because that's how you'll get smarter and more successful. Thanks for being part of this, and remember to always stay non-obvious.